I'd like to call this meeting to order, so welcome to the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assemblyman DeLong.
Present.
Assemblywoman Dickman.
Here.
Assemblyman De Silva.
Here.
Assemblywoman Gonzalez.
Here.
Assemblyman Hibbets. Assemblyman MacArthur. Assemblywoman Brittany Miller. Assemblyman Cameron C.H. Miller. Assemblywoman Monroe Marino. Assemblywoman Newby. Assemblyman Yeager. Chair Gorlow.
Thank you. I am here. Welcome everyone to Carson City, and I see we have a couple people in Las Vegas as well, and hopefully we have a few on the phone as well. We've got a couple of bills. In fact, we've got 3 today, plus a work session. We will be taking things out of order because some of our members are in other committees. Oh, I forgot to mention, anyone that's not here, please mark present when they arrive. They're in committees also. It's deadline week, and so getting our bills out. So thank you for your patience. Some quick housekeeping before we begin. Please make sure all your electronics are turned off or silenced. I'm going to check my own as we're talking. Yep, that's good. Nothing more embarrassing than having the chair's phone go off. If you wish to testify, please come to the table and make sure you turn on the microphone and state and spell your name slowly for the record. We do expect courtesy in our interactions, so even if we don't agree with what's being said or the policy position, we need to be respectful and courteous to everyone. That's not only when you're testifying, but also to people who are in our audience as well. We will be using our laptops to view handouts and other documents, so please do not take this as a sign of disrespect. And with that, I am going to take this out of order. We are going to start with Senate Bill 328. If Senator Titus and Senator Wynn would like to come to the table. I just came from their committee, now they're down here, and I know they've got a work session themselves, so thank you both for being here, and you may begin when ready.
Well, first and foremost, thank you very much, Chair, and all members of this committee. It is a lot of moving parts right now, and to those that are freshmen, welcome, and this is what happens at the end, and being accommodating, it is fun to see your chair in our committee and then rush down to be in front of you. So for those of you who do not know me, I am Senator Dr. Robin Titus. I represent Senate District 17. It includes all of Douglas County, Lyon County, Churchill County, Mineral County, Esmeralda counties, and part of Nye, specifically Tonopah. Here at the table with me is Senator Rochelle Wynn from Senate District 3. We are here to present SB 328. SB 328 revives the procedures by which the Cannabis Compliance Board is required to adopt, amend, or repeal regulations. We brought forward SB 328 after receiving many statements of concern and complaints regarding the regulations and fines that the Cannabis Compliance Board had administered. That led us to a question of how the regulations were passed. Just a little overview. The first laws in Nevada regarding cannabis were passed in 2002. AB 453 established medical marijuana in the Department of Agriculture. In 2019, after passing through a ballot initiative, recreational marijuana became legal, and AB 533 created the Cannabis Advisory Board. At the time, it was a new industry, and the regulatory process was in its infancy. It was decided to place the board in the provisions of the Nevada Administrative Procedure Act, with the idea that they would function similar to gaming. NRS 678-460 is a section that creates their special regulation process. This bill, SB 328, eliminates their exemption from the Administrative Procedure Act, Chapter 33B of NRS. It would then require any regulations that they pass go to the Legislative Commission. To be clear, the Legislative Commission can review the regulations now, but they have to request that they be reviewed. Madam Chair, I'm going to return the presentation over now to Senator Wynn, with your permission, for further comments and to discuss some amendments that we should all have, and also we'll have a comment from a comment that we got from our legal division just today, actually, on this bill. So, Senator Wynn.
Thank you, and good afternoon. This is my first time in the Legislative Operations and Elections Committee in either house, and it's actually my very first time in this committee, and I'm a little intimidated by the fact that you are all like 5 feet away from me here in this front row. I'm excited to be here again. My name is Rochelle Wynn. I represent Senate District 3 in central Las Vegas in the best part of Nevada. And I am excited to be here sitting, and I said this in the assembly when we presented. Never did I think I'd be sitting here presenting and co-sponsoring a bill about weed with Dr. Titus, but here we are today, so very exciting. I'm just going to kind of go into some of the details, and hopefully you all have the proposed amendment that we submitted, and that is an amendment that we will be presenting in addition to some of the things here. My favorite thing about this bill is it came forth as we were sitting in the Finance Committee listening to the Cannabis Compliance Board present their budget. And I remember Senator Titus leaned over, because she sits next to me, and she was like, "Where do the regulations go? Do they have to come to legislative commission?" And I said, "No." And she said, "We should change that." And I said, "We should." And she said, "I have an extra bill." And I said, "You should use it." And then a couple days later, the language appeared and we signed it. And now we are here today before you today. So I think it shows the kind of collaboration and problem solving we can do when we work across the aisle and we have those kind of conversations with our neighbors. So I'm excited to be here to present this bill with Senator Titus. In 2019, the legislature, again, Dr. Titus had said this, created the Cannabis Compliance Board along with the passage of Assembly Bill 533. The legislation modeled the Cannabis Compliance Board after the Gaming Control Board in many ways, including exempting them from NRS Chapter 233B, the Administrative Procedure Act. The CCB's procedure varies slightly from the Gaming Control Board in that currently the Legislative Commission can review a regulation passed by the CCB if the regulation is pulled in by a legislator within a designated time frame. However, the scope of that review is limited and narrow as to whether the CCB exceeded its statutory authority in passing the regulation. With any agency, there's always concern with concentrating the powers of rulemaking, investigating, prosecuting, and decision-making all in one body. And the Administrative Procedures Act is a safeguard against that kind of accumulation of unchecked power in any one administrative agency. I know that when we created this, and there are members sitting on this committee that were a part of that, I think we were trying to do the best we could with a new thing. I always say that the CCB is still in its infancy, and as a legislature, we will come back and probably fine-tune and tweak and figure out what will make this, which will rise Nevada up to the gold standard, not only in gaming, but also in the cannabis industry. And this is one of those steps. Removing the CCB's exemption from the APA provides for uniformity in administrative rulemaking as well as consistent review and approval of agency regulations by the Legislative Commission. The Act also provides a clear process for adjudicating disputes before administrative agencies for judicial review. And with that, I will walk through the sections of the bill as specifically, and then after that, I will walk through the sections of the amendment. Section 1 amends NRS to refer NRS Chapter 233B with respect to disciplinary actions by the CCB. Because the CCB was exempt from the APA when the agency was created, it has a set of statutes related to disciplinary procedures that diverge from NRS 233B. And this amendment incorporates the provisions of 233B into the existing statute where applicable. Section 2 incorporates the hearing rules into NRS 233B.123. Section 3 incorporates, again, more sections of 233B to allow for findings of fact and conclusions of law to be waived where the parties have settled. Section 4 applies the procedure for seeking judicial review as set forth in the 233B to final decisions of the Cannabis Compliance Board. And it also, Section 5 removes the Cannabis Compliance Board from the list of agencies exempt from the requirements of 233B. Section 6 repeals statutes would conflict with the Administrative Procedure Act, and Section 7 makes the effective date of this bill upon passage and approval. Essentially, what these original sections of the bill do is they bring more due process and more clarity to the process that the Cannabis Compliance Board and the industries that are regulated by that board are overseen. It also empowers the legislature, again, to make sure that our intention is overseen through that legislative commission, which is all of us that are represented in there. I know sometimes we are an equal branch of government and only 120 days of the year, every other year, and this brings a little bit more balance to that process and also provides more due process protections for those businesses that are under the CCB. Now I kind of want to go through some of the amendments, and I have Brett Scolari here to answer any questions that the committee might have regarding the amendment that we have. This was submitted on behalf of the cannabis industry, and I know that they worked in cooperation with the CCB and a bunch of other stakeholders, as well as the Nevada Cannabis Association, as well as myself and other legislators in this process. And we appreciate them working alongside us to come up with some of these amendments. So concept 1 of the amendment makes various changes to the preamble of the Cannabis Compliance Board to more accurately reflect the role and purpose of the board. When this was first established, I think we had an idea of how we saw the cannabis industry in our state, and this kind of brings a more modern approach of what we've learned over the past 5 years, and it brings that to that preamble in the section of the NRS that recognizes recognizes the unregulated and unlicensed market, the challenges that it brings. It also makes clear that it is a policy goal of this legislature that the board commit to considering social equity when issuing cannabis licenses. It also changes and the changes also acknowledge that a well-regulated industry is important to the state welfare economy and runs contrary to the criminal and corruptive elements of an unregulated and illegal market. So what we were hoping with this amendment is that it strikes the balance between the strict but fair regulation of those operating licenses of cannabis establishments. Concept 2 in the proposed amendment also specifies that the board adopts and sets regulatory policies within the authority granted to it by this legislative body. This change reinforces the board's obligation to review and adopt policy and aims to promote open and robust discussion to give the regulated industry more predictability and participation in the regulatory process. A lot of these concepts come from the idea that this is a legitimate business in our state, and we need to treat it with modern and fair and open regulatory processes that we would for any other business industry in this state. Concept 3 also revises factors for the governor to consider when appointing certain board members. For instance, the changes include special reference to experience in agriculture, manufacturing, distribution, retail, law enforcement, and illegal cannabis activities, and laboratory testing. The proposed amendment also removes the cooling off period for the industry related to board positions to attract quality candidates with relevant experience. This is kind of a direct reflection that we want the Cannabis Compliance Board to not only just have regulatory experience and have administrative experience, but also have an experience with the business community, to have experience with the agriculture community, to have experience with the cannabis industry, because they're not meant to be limiting, but to also give the governor some additional flexibility when appointing board members who have experience in areas that could benefit the board with real life experience, not only with business, but also with the cannabis industry. For example, independent laboratory testing is an incredibly important piece of the regulated cannabis industry, yet the current statutes don't provide for the appointment of a board member with any lab testing experience. So I think having that scientific background will make our industry thrive. It will make it safer for consumers, knowing that they are purchasing well-regulated, well-tested like products. Additionally, the removal of the cooling off period for the industry board position is specific to that position, which is someone with skill and experience in the cannabis industry. It has been limited to an individual without ownership interest in the industry, and this is an incredibly small pool. It's like having a business industry organization, and if you own a business, you can't be a part of it. And this kind of looks to address that. For example, a number of attorneys who practice regularly in the cannabis law area in Nevada is only around 24. I know that may seem like a lot because the lawyers like myself are probably pretty annoying, but there are only 24 cannabis lawyers that practice in this state. It's still a very small and very young industry, and having a cooling off period that essentially prevents a former board member from appearing before a board for a year following board service severely limits the pool of qualified candidates. And so that's what that amendment seeks to amend. Concept 4 also staggers board members and allows a change of chair position after 2 years and adds a vice chair position. So some of this is mostly just strong governance changes that gives some flexibility. Right now, everyone is on the same timeline, and so this staggers that, so there's some more continuity within the board membership, and also allows for more changes in that leadership structure and more support by adding that vice chair position. Under the current statute, board members are served concurrently, commencing on the last Monday of January, and this amendment, again, staggers those terms to promote, again, that stability of that board. So there's some stability, continuity, all of the things that you would have. This is not unusual to other boards, and that is why we are seeking that governance change here with the CCB. Concept 5 provides that the ED of the CCB is appointed and removed by the governor. It also revises factors for the governor to consider when appointing the executive director, including skill and experience in regulated industries. Moving the executive director to the governor appointment promotes more communication and cooperation between the governor's office and the board, and at the same time, the Legislative Commission will have oversight over the rulemaking process with the removal of the board's exemption from the APA in Chapter 233B. Again, this is common for similar state agencies. The executive director of the Department of Taxation is appointed by the board. The governor appoints the member of the Gaming Control Board to serve as both the chairman of the board and the executive director of the agency. So this is consistent with some other boards that we have. And again, we will have that additional legislative oversight with the rulemaking when it comes to referring this over to the Legislative Commission. And concept number 6 revises board powers, and it gives clear direction to the CCB to investigate and refer unlicensed cannabis activities to appropriate state and law enforcement agencies, and also direct the board to educate the public on the dangers of purchasing from the illegal market. The illicit market is not easily defeated, but we believe that some of these tools and these resources and these educational pieces will be important to moving that needle. Concept 7 includes a provision to train and certified board agents prior to commencing inspections or audits and investigations of licensees. This recommendation also encourages the board to adopt a system to educate licensees on the items of general compliance. And depending on where another bill, there is Senate Bill 195, which is a bill that I sponsored that had to do with time and effort billing. The concept number 7 also plays and is consistent with some of the struggles that the industry has had when it comes to some of those regulations. These proposed changes promote regulatory predictability and an educate first, discipline second type environment. It's also strict but fair and equitable system that promotes discourse and respect between the regulator and the licensees. And we're hoping that the committee will take these into consideration and be supportive of this bill. Again, thank you for listening to me drone on and walk you through a bill. I never thought I would walk someone through a bill like that, and I just did. So hopefully it was informative, but we are ready for questions, and we do have quite a few phone a friends in the room to provide any assistance that we might have. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions? Oh, Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much. The amendment for concept 1 and 3F. Could you further explain what with a commitment to the consideration of social equity?
Rochelle Wynn for the record. I'm actually going to call Brett Scolari because I know he was a part of some of these conversations with other groups. But it's my understanding that we wanted to make sure that that was stated explicitly in this preamble, in this section. I know that social equity programs and bringing that kind of thing has never been clearly put into policy or in this preamble. So by adding that, but fair and equitable regulation of persons, by bringing the consideration and commitment to social equity, I think we are standing as a legislature saying that within this industry, it is important that we take those things into consideration when we are making changes to our cannabis laws. And I can turn it over to Brett to also make some comments on that as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brett Scolari, Strategies 360 for the record. Appreciate being here today. Appreciate the sponsors taking this amendment up with us. There was a lot of hard work put into this, and we sincerely appreciate your consideration. To Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno's question, we had some discussions with Aisha Goins and some other stakeholders on social equity, and we wanted to make sure that the preamble reflected social equity. It never had before, obviously, and to the extent the legislature ever authorizes more licenses in the market, what the preamble will do is make sure that social equity is taken into consideration when those new licensing rounds come around. So that's really what it is. It gives direction to the board that that needs to be considered in future rounds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then my next question would be on concept 3, the members of the board. And concept 1, it spoke about social equity, but when it looks at the members of the board, my background was in law enforcement, and I often saw, witness those that got arrested for possession of marijuana were largely black and brown people. But then when we legalized marijuana in the state of Nevada, which I totally agree with, those that were able to open a business, participate on the other side, were not black and brown people. So I'm looking at the board, and there's no mention of diversity and inclusion. Could you say why, and could that be added?
Brett Scolari for the record. Certainly we would be open to talking about that concept. I think what we tried to do is make sure the board reflected those types of businesses that affect the industry, so agriculture, lab testing. So you had folks with expertise, but and then there was also the cannabis industry specialty too as well. So I think the industry would obviously be open to a factor that would consider social equity, or however we wanted to put it, so be happy to discuss that.
Rochelle Wynn for the record. I don't have any opposition to that too. I think we were focused on like some of the skill sets, but I think including, that representation is obviously important, and I would be open to those kind of amendments, and I think Dr. Titus would as well.
Thank you, and thank you, Raman Titus, for the record, and thank you for bringing that up, because sometimes you're so focused on making sure this is fair and equitable that you lose some of well, it's actually part of the bigger pictures. And so again, the regulatory process, again, as Mr. Scolari mentioned, was really about skill sets, but it's our hope that in the future, licenses can go out to people that are black and brown and minority. And so have them as part of the regulatory process is an excellent suggestion, and frankly, we should have picked that up.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome. Next, we have a question from Assemblywoman Newby.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you for the presentation of this bill. This question may be for legal or anyone else in the room. I was wondering if the CCB members are considered public officials for purposes of the required ethics and governance training that is often required of many board members.
Rochelle Wynn for the record. I have no idea, so I will defer to your legal counsel. And
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Kevin Powers, Committee Counsel. The definition of what a public officer is established by the Nevada Supreme Court as a position created by the Constitution, statute, or ordinance, and which is invested within some portion of the sovereign function of a government or a public power, trust, or duty. Under that two-part definition, the members of the Cannabis Compliance Board are public officers, and they would be subject to the ethics laws in NRS Chapter 281A of NRS, and they are in fact right now subject to those ethics law in NRS Chapter 281A of NRS. However, since I have the mic, and I want to point out something under Concept 3 in subsection 8 of their Concept 3 on page 2, there's a reference that one category member of the board would not be subject to the cooling off provisions in the ethics laws in NRS 281A.410.1. That is overbroad. The cooling off provisions are in NRS 281A.410.1B. There's a provision in 1A that prohibits a public officer from being paid compensation to lobby before its own board, and that prohibition should still apply to the cannabis compliance members. So since we're on the subject of ethics, Madam Chair, thank you for that indulgence.
Thank you very much. Assemblywoman, did you have any follow-ups? Oh, okay, great. Then we will go to Speaker Yeager.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and it's a pleasure to see you both here, now senators, but former assembly members. Thank you for presenting this bill. I have a couple of comments and then a couple of questions. I had flashbacks to Assembly Bill 533 of the 2019 session, which was the creation of the Cannabis Compliance Board in all 246 sections of its glory that year. But to your point, Senator Wynn, I think we did try to get it right, but I don't think we got it 100% right. Not surprising with a bill that big that came late in the session. But the comments I just had were, as the chair of Legislative Commission, it really was sort of a weird place to have the cannabis compliance regulations in this space where they could be pulled into a meeting, but only if affirmatively asked by a member of the Legislative Commission or another member of the legislature not on the Legislative Commission. So we had that happen once, and it was a little bit clunky procedure-wise. So I appreciate the amendment to just make this very clear. I think members of the Legislative Commission, some of them didn't understand that we didn't review regulations as a matter of course from the Cannabis Compliance Board. So I want to thank you for that amendment, and well, that's what the bill itself does. And then on the amendment side, I just wanted to take a moment to really highlight under Concept 4, I think it was subsection 5, the part that requires each board member to receive the same or similar training that you would need to work or volunteer at a cannabis establishment. I think that's really critical. I mean, we would hope people would go out on a limb and do that anyway. But I think obviously the more education we can give to folks about how the industry operates on the ground level is important. And so those are the comments. The question I have is about Concept 6 in the proposed amendment, and specifically it's the last subsection D of Section 7. It talks about establishing a disciplinary and civil penalty system. And I think this is one of the places where maybe we weren't clear enough when we created the Cannabis Compliance Board that part of their duty and mission should be to go after the unregulated market, much as we expect the Gaming Control Board to do. Of course, the funding is different, the positions are different, but my question about this part here was, they could establish a system, but how do you envision this would work because it's a civil penalty system? Would they have the authority to issue those fines to illicit or unregulated actors, or would there be a referral system? Because I know on the criminal side it's a referral to the prosecuting agency, but wondered how you envision that actually playing out.
Rochelle Wynn for the record, and I think Mr. Scolari can also follow up with this. There has been some confusion. I think we had intentions, and I think you had intentions when some of these things were created. And even last session, there was a bill brought to allow for civil penalties for the sale. I think up to like $50,000, and no one knew who was responsible for bringing those civil penalties. And I think this language was meant to just clarify that we want the CCB to do that in those civil areas. So that's kind of my understanding of it, and you can follow up if you have any other further.
Thank you. Brett Scolari for the record. Mr. Speaker, I think the concept was to, there's some in-your-face, low-hanging fruit out there right now. We have storefronts opening up with big pot leaves on the door. We have illegal delivery services on Craigslist. I think this intention is to give the CCB a tool to go after those businesses and call them before them, to fine them, potentially refer them to the business license division of the local government they're in, to pull a business license if they in fact are acting as a licensee or imitating a licensee or have products with THC in them. So I think this is a way to give the CCB some tools, talk about it in some regulations and work through it, where they can refer things to certain agencies. They can call these folks in and regulate them from a standpoint that you aren't licensed, so we're gonna shut you down, type thing. So that was really it. Again, it's the civil penalty system, so we had to stick it somewhere, and we think the CCB has the tools to do that.
And if I might follow up, Robin Titus, for the record, Mr. Speaker, thank you for that question, because it's one of those very reasons that we are looking at putting this process back through the Ledge Commission. Because as they look at establishing some of these penalties and some of these regulations that have to happen, they are going to be mandated to go through the Ledge Commission to make sure the regulations are acceptable and appropriate. So that is where this body is going to get back involved. So thank you for that question.
Thank you very much. Next, we have a question from Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to follow up on the speaker's question on Concept 6, subsection 7D. So are you envisioning that the Cannabis Control Board would have, in essence, pot cops going out and doing enforcement and issuing citations, or trying to get a better idea of what's actually going to happen on the ground?
Thank you, Brett Scolari for the record. That's really not the intent. I'll give you an analogy we've come up with. If someone were to put a unregulated poker table in the middle of the strip and try to do a gaming operation, the Gaming Control Board would obviously shut those folks down. So similar concept. We want to make sure the CCB has a tool to, if there's something recognized out there, a delivery system, a storefront that's open that says they're CBD shop but needs to be investigated, we wanted to have this isn't going to give CCB a bunch more, there's not a fiscal note on this. It's really to have some regulations in place where they could go have some teeth to investigate, those storefronts that open up, a illegal delivery shop, something happening on Craigslist. They really didn't have that tool before.
And just follow up, Robin Titus, for the record. And then if it's against the law, then the law enforcement could have that as opposed. The reason there's no fiscal note, it allows for the existing Cannabis Compliance Board to identify and set some regulations. And then if they say out there, like we would see now, if there's something in any business in Nevada that is operating outside the scope, these departments don't all have their law enforcement. We have, the gaming board is the exception to that. So they would fall under all the other departments that you see something that's not correct.
Just a quick follow-up. That's why I question it, because you were comparing it to the Gaming Control Board, and they have different powers. That's where I was going.
Thank you very much. Committee, do we have any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Do you have another comment? Please go ahead.
Rochelle Wynn for the record. There are some post-certified officers that are part of the CCB, so they do have that. This gives them directions on the disciplinary and civil penalty system. And like Senator Titus had mentioned before, this in combination with taking it back to the Legislative Commission, there's some oversight, so they can't be overly, prosecutorial. They can, any of those civil regulations have to come through the Legislative Commission. So it gives this body back more power and checks and balances in that. But there are some there are some post-certified officers that are a part of that. So they do have some ability to engage in that type of enforcement. But I think there's only there's very few of them. So they are not there's 4 of them for the entire state. So it is not something that they are equipped at this time to be able to handle for the large amounts. So they do rely on local law enforcement.
Thank you very much. Last call for questions. Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. We will open up testimony and support. If you are in support of SB 328, please come up to the table. In Las Vegas, if you want to come up to the table, we'll come to you when we're finished with Carson City. And whomever wants to go first can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Gorlow and members of the committee. My name is Esther Badiata with Sala Consulting, representing Planet 13 Holdings and Hardin Premium Cannabis Dispensary. Today, we offer our support for SB 328 and the proposed amendments. We believe this bill will help to bring about transparency and due process within the cannabis industry in a way that is beneficial to both licensees and the state. Additionally, the bill, as amended, would enact important updates to the board structure and provide beneficial legislative direction. We'd like to express our thanks to the bill sponsors for bringing forth this bill and urge the committee's support. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Lake Martin on behalf of the Nevada Cannabis Association. We support the bill and the amendments and thank the sponsors for bringing it.
Will Adler, representing the Sierra Cannabis Coalition. I would actually like to ditto the comments from Speaker Yeager, actually, on his commentary today, because I do think SB 328 is looking to reaffirm and correct some of the changes made when the CCB was incepted in 2019, and some of the oversight that was lacking there and the lack of regulatory process and due process that was created when we made this. So thank you for bringing this bill forward, Senator Titus and Wynn, and full support for the bill and the amendment. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Ashley Cruz with Carrera, Nevada for the record, here on behalf of the Chamber of Cannabis. They are in support of the bill, and I just want to thank the sponsors for bringing this bill forward. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Is there anyone else in Carson City who would like to testify in support? Okay, seeing none, we will go to Las Vegas. You may begin when ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Kimberly Maxon Rushton. I'm an attorney in Las Vegas and represent a number of cannabis licensees. Prior to becoming an administrative attorney in the private sector, I served as the chief of the Nevada Attorney General's office and then was appointed as a regulator by Governor Gwynn to regulate the Nevada Transportation Authority and oversee commercial transportation. That said, I'm very familiar with the specifics of 233B and the Administrative Procedures Act, and strongly encourage you to pass 328 in its original form as well as with the proposed amendments. As the other commentators have stated, this will ensure transparency and accountability that all state agencies should be responsible for holding in their oversight of any regulatory agency. I also, again, commend the sponsors with respect to their proposed amendments. I think these are necessary changes for the industry, and we welcome those and, again, encourage your support. As always, thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas who would like to testify in support? Okay, seeing none, broadcasting, is there anyone on the telephone?
To testify in support of Senate Bill 328, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last digits 283, please press *6 to unmute your phone. You are unmuted and may begin.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Donna Bath in Ely, Nevada, and I would like to thank the sponsors for doing this bill and also thank the committee for hearing this and just wanted to offer my support in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcasting next caller, please.
If you have recently joined and would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 328, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to testify in support at this time.
Thank you very much. We will move on to testimony in opposition. Is there anybody in Clark County, not Clark County, sorry, Carson City, that would like to testify in opposition? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone in Las Vegas? Seeing none, broadcasting, do I have anyone on the telephone?
To testify in opposition to Senate Bill 328, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. We'll close testimony in opposition and go to testimony in neutral. Is there anyone in Carson City who would like to testify in neutral? Seeing none. In Las Vegas, anyone would like to come to the table to testify in neutral? Okay, seeing none. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the telephone?
To testify in neutral for Senate Bill 328, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you very much. We'll close testimony in neutral and we'll invite the speakers. Do you want to come back up for last comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. It's an interesting world that we live in, and we must address it and can't ignore it. And there was clearly deficiencies in the regulatory process of this industry that we now have in Nevada that pay taxes in Nevada. And as we move forward with the experience that we have, we need to fix it. I appreciate Minority Leader, Moreno, who's Minority Leader in the and our chair of our finance committees and Ways and Means. I appreciate her attention to the social equity comment and members, and we'll work on that because I think it's really important. And Speaker Yeager, I appreciate your comments also. So hopefully we'll get those all clarified and we can get support from this committee to really improve the regulatory process of this industry that needs it so greatly. Thank you.
Thank you very much and hope we got you back to HHS on time. And with that, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 328. And do we have Senator Flores available? Did we lose him? I think we lost him, so. His computer's here. Okay, then he'll be here. He's got to be close. Oh, there he. Okay. Welcome, Senator. We appreciate your patience as we took your colleagues first. And Senate Bill 262 revises the qualifications for membership on certain advisory councils and boards. When you're settled and get ready, you may begin. Thank you.
My apologies, Madam Chair, for my tardiness. Senator Edgar Flores, for the record, proudly representing Senate District 2. And I am here to present, along with Commissioner Sager-Bloom, Senate Bill 262, excuse me. If I could provide some context as to why I'm presenting this bill today. I'll give you the genesis, walk you briefly through the bill, provide a conceptual amendment that we can discuss as a committee, and then lastly, open it up for any questions. But before we open it for questions, I'd hand it over to Commissioner Sager-Bloom. I originally had the privilege to serve for the first time in 2015. And in my very first committee, I sat in Government Affairs. And I mention that because I've served on the Government Affairs Committee since 2015, and there hasn't been a single session, not one, that I've heard a bill that was specifically designed to reduce the criteria, to remove some of the safeguards in place so that somebody can serve on a board. In fact, the constant conversation we've engaged in ever since I've been in this building is we got to get rid of boards, we can't find enough people to serve, how do we make these qualifications easier, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This bill helps address some of those concerns. But specifically, Commissioner Sager-Bloom engaged in a conversation with a few of us in this building not too long ago, a few months prior to session commencing, and talked to me about a town board or a city council board where the intent was to appoint a legal permanent resident to serve. And I believe in that scenario, and Commissioner Sager-Bloom will be more detailed, but it was somebody from the Culinary Union that wanted to participate. But they realized that that individual couldn't serve, unfortunately, because they weren't U.S. citizens. And that is a terminology that is used in this bill, which you'll see in their qualified elector. And that is the intent. I want to cast a larger net so that individuals that live in our communities, that are engaged in our community, that want to participate, can in fact do so. However, in the original drafting of this bill, I casted a much larger net than I originally intended. And now I had an opportunity to speak both with the chair and vice chair on this particular subject matter. And I appreciate them sitting down with me and speaking of our great vice. Thank you for joining us. But I had an opportunity to meet with both of them. And one of the questions I was asked is if we were trying to capture undocumented immigrants. And that was never the intent. I mean, quite frankly, if you're undocumented, you're probably afraid to be involved in anything government, period. That was never the intent. I was focusing on folk that are lawfully living in the U.S., but are just not U.S. citizens yet. Perfect example is my father. He actually served on an advisory council, became a U.S. citizen recently, a few years ago, and he could do that. But my dad's been living here since 1979. My point is, he's been a contributing member of this community. He's been incredibly involved. I would argue that my father is probably amongst the most recognized Latino men in Southern Nevada. I don't know anybody that gets more asked for pictures. He can't walk anywhere, right? He's incredibly involved in the community. He does all the charity events. He does amazing work in the community. So understandably, he's been asked by city council and county commission on various occasions to participate and get involved. Well, my father couldn't have done that a few years prior to him becoming a U.S. citizen, but he was already incredibly involved in the community. So what we wanted to do is just expand the parameters. So the idea is, presently, right now, and by the way, one of the questions that I want to preemptively address is when we say town board or citizen council, how many of those are we talking about? I want to give you some context. In Clark County, it would impact 19, Douglas 3, Elko 4, Eureka 1, Lander 2, Lincoln 3, Lyon 6, Mineral 1, Nye 4, Pershing 2, Washoe 8, and White Pine 4. Those are the amount that are impacted and that this would apply to. We are obviously not talking about city council members. We're not talking about county commissioners. We're not really talking about anybody who's going to be making incredibly important decisions. We are simply talking about the folk, as Commissioner Sager-Bloom will allude to in a second, that help the commissioner make decisions. They live in a certain neighborhood. They realize that we need maybe a stop sign. We got to make some corrections in the community, and they'll provide that information and send it up to the actual commissioners or to the council members to take actual action. So those are the folk that we are trying to capture. And with that, Madam Chair, if it'd be okay, I'd like to hand over the presentation to Commissioner Sager-Bloom.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you.
Commissioner, you can begin when ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Senator Flores mentioned, this bill came up during my service as a county commissioner, where we have town boards. They're advisory in nature, but they're based in local areas. And where there's a zoning issue, or sometimes there's chickens that neighbors are complaining about, things like that, where the people that live in the neighborhood are the first avenue of a complaint or an appeal process. So the town boards, for example, on Sunrise Mountain, they will review zoning changes, or somebody wants to get a variance for their house, or again, as somebody said, there's chickens in the neighborhood and they want to get an exemption so they can have chickens in an area where you're not allowed to have chickens. But they're the hands on the ground, and they're the people who are most impacted by these ordinances and zoning problems that we have. And so honestly, it's not that easy to find people who give up their time two nights a month to spend hours in a meeting where you have to hear from neighbors, hear lots of issues. A lot of it's pretty exciting, a lot of it's not so exciting, but like in the legislature. But the truth is, we've had a hard time sometimes finding people who are knowledgeable and active and care about their community. So I reached out to the Color Union and said, do you have members who would like to participate on one of these boards? And they responded yes, and presented a nice gentleman, owned a house, had been around for a long time, was very interested in his neighborhood, appeared to be perfectly qualified to serve. It never occurred to me to ask, are you a citizen? That really wasn't a relevant question in my mind. It was, do you know the neighborhood? Are you willing to serve? Do you have good judgment? And he seemed perfect. After he applied and went through the process, we discovered that there's this state law which prohibits people who are not citizens from participating in these town advisory boards. They do not write laws. They do not pass anything that's binding. All they do is recommend decisions to me as the county commissioner, and then I, along with my fellow county commissioners, will vote on the issue. We'll have a separate hearing on the issue. So it's not like this is the only chance that people have to appear before these boards. But the main thing is they are neighbors. They're your neighbors, they're my neighbors. They are very active in our society. They're the most hardworking, qualified people you'd ever find to represent their neighborhood. And yet, because of this strange law, currently they can't. So I went to Senator Flores and said, this seems unfair and really hurts us as a society. He agreed to carry this bill, and that's why we're here. But there's no magic to it. But I just want to point out that they're not going to have binding authority to bind anybody. It's strictly an advisory board, but it's a great opportunity for me to get input from the neighborhood. Most of them are probably going to become citizens pretty quickly. So in that citizenship process, they are learning how our government works. So it's just a win-win for everybody. And so I would urge you to give this careful consideration and hopefully pass it so that people like the gentleman I was speaking of can help me better represent my neighborhoods.
And Madam Chair, if I may add a quick point.
Please do.
Senator Edgar Flores, for the record, and just for the members, for the sake of clarity, if you, for example, in section 1, page 2, line 8, you'll see qualified elector crossed out. And what we would then, in my conceptual amendment that I am putting out there for us to discuss, would be that it would read somebody lawfully authorized to be in the U.S. Same thing, we would add the same exact language under page 3, section 2, line 10. Same thing in page 4, lines 9 and 11, and 25. And I just wanted to make that clear and put that on the record. Again, the intent was to capture folk that are lawfully authorized to be here. And to me, it just didn't cross my mind to be that specific, although just to make it abundantly clear, someone who's undocumented, it would be very rare that they would want to be involved in anything government. They're probably concerned to participate in anything in that means. Please, Madam Chair, any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I have a question from Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I have a comment and then I think a question. The comment is the language you talked about as far as deleting the elector language and putting in something that's someone that's legally qualified to be. I think we should probably be very specific because that could be interpreted legally qualified might be the people that are coming across the border illegally right now that are getting the app. and showing up for a court date in 4 years. So I think we need to be careful with that language, whatever it might be that you present to this committee. The testimony that both of you provided makes it sound like town boards they're appointed, not bodies that are elected and make decisions. But in section 4, subsection 3, you've got a declaration for candidacy for a town board, which means we're talking about someone that's going to appear on the ballot in either a primary or a general election that's potentially not a citizen. That would be something new for this state, and to me is somewhat disconcerting.
And thank you for that comment, Senator Edgar Flores, for the record. And maybe our legal could help clarify if that in fact is the case, that they would in fact appear on a ballot and/or in a primary or general.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Kevin Powers, Committee Counsel. This is going to be an extensive answer, so sit back in your seats and here we go. This is all, again, going to turn on the concept of what is a public officer under the state constitution and state law. Our starting point is the Nevada Constitution, Article 15, Section 3, that provides no one is eligible to an office unless they are a qualified elector under the Nevada Constitution. To be a qualified elector under the Nevada Constitution, Article 2, Section 1 provides that you have to be a citizen of the United States, at least 18 years of age, not laboring under any of the disabilities listed in the Constitution, unless those disabilities have been removed, and a resident of the state for a certain period and a resident of the county and your district for a certain period. So then the question becomes, if a position in state or local government is an office, those office holders has to be qualified electors. However, if the position in state or local government is not an office, then those office holders do not have to be qualified electors, and the legislature can prescribe by statute the qualifications for those offices. That brings us then to this particular bill. We are dealing with town advisory councils and town advisory boards governed by NRS Chapter 269. In certain counties, the town advisory councils or boards can be either elected or appointed. Generally, then the question becomes, given that they're advisory boards, are the persons who hold these positions public officers holding a public office? Then we go to the two-part test developed by the Nevada Supreme Court for public offices. And that two-part test is the position has to be established by the Constitution, a statute, or an ordinance, and it has to be invested with some portion of a sovereign function or a public power, trust, or duty. In this case, these positions, the town advisory council, the town advisory boards, they're created by statute, there's no doubt. So the question becomes, are they invested with any sovereign powers or any power, public power, trust, or duty? It's the LCB Legal's opinion that generally, because these town advisory boards only recommend matters to the Board of County Commissioners, that these town advisory boards are not exercising a sovereign function or a public power, trust, or duty, and therefore the members of the town advisory council board are not holding public offices, and they do not have to be qualified electors. Having said that, though, unfortunately, the bill needs to be drafted with a little more precision given that distinction. There are some statutes in NRS 269 that allow a Board of County Commissioners to delegate powers to a town advisory council or a town advisory board. So for those town advisory councils or town advisory boards, they would have to be qualified electors. So based on the proposed conceptual amendment, what the redraft would be is bifurcating. That if the town advisory council or town advisory board doesn't have any of those delegated powers, then they don't have to be qualified electors. They just have to meet the qualifications provided by statute, which could be the qualification being a legal resident of the United States, and they don't have to be qualified electors. But if those are town advisory councils or boards in which those members have been delegated authority by the Board of County Commissioners, they would need to be qualified electors. Circling back around to the original question then. Even if they're not public officers, the Board of County Commissioners can still provide by ordinance for them to be elected and not appointed. So it could be possible that a Board of County Commissioners creates a town advisory council or board that doesn't have a public power trust or duty, but still is elected, and then those individuals, even though they're not holding public offices, would be on the ballot to be elected to those town advisory councils or boards. However, if the town advisory council or board did have those delegated powers from the county and they were subject to election, then they would be public officers on the ballot. So I hope that covers everything, Madam Chair, and I told you needed to sit back and enjoy the ride. Thank you.
Thankfully, that's been recorded, so check it out again. Did that answer your question, Assemblyman? All right, thank you. Our next question is going to be from Assemblywoman Newby.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, Senator Flores and Commissioner Segerblom, for bringing this bill. As someone who was staff running this process to try and get people on town advisory boards, I can attest to how difficult it is. And my question, unfortunately, I think is going to go back into the qualified electors, because my confusion was, I looked in the NRS chapter that this is in, and I didn't find a definition of qualified elector. The only one I found was in, I think 266, which is a person who is registered to vote in the state and a resident of the area. So it sounds to me like the definition that we're using for qualified electors is actually the one maybe in the Constitution, because if it's the one in 266, it's a much wider net. It could be anybody who is just not registered to vote for whatever reason. So I hope that makes sense, Mr. Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to follow up on the Assemblywoman's question, I'd have to analyze what the definition in 266 is and to what statutes it applies. But the term qualified elector is defined by the Constitution, and that term can't be changed by the legislature because it is a constitutional term. And so the only way that the legislature can have qualifications that are different from a qualified elector is if the position is not a public office and is simply a position that doesn't have that that public power, trust, or duty, or exercising that sovereign function. Thank you.
Thank you. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and I will send Mr. Powers the site in 266.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Assemblyman De Silva.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two quick questions. One question. First and foremost, I do got to agree with you and say that your dad is probably way more famous than any of us is in our neck of the woods there. And the second, I'm glad that, thank you for this for starting this conversation. I think these are healthy conversations for us to have as not just Nevadans but as Americans, as we are, pushing that point. Now, I think about 12 to 15% of the U.S. population is foreign-born. We're talking about at least 1 out of 6, 1 out of 7 people was not born in the United States, and a great swath of those, a significant amount, are not naturalized. They haven't gone through that process yet. So my question is this: what kind of opportunities do non-citizens have to publicly and civically participate in our society?
And thank you for that. And I'll start off by acknowledging that Senator Edgar Flores, for the record, representing Senate District 2, I'll start off just by pointing at you, Assembly Member. You've honorably served this country. You have a Purple Heart, but you weren't born here. And now you are a member of the Nevada State Assembly. There is no one that would argue that if we just took away your title of citizen, but everything else remained true, you're a teacher, Purple Heart, you've been involved in the community, you do amazing work, that we probably wouldn't want you around. I think most humans would say, I would love to have him participating in the process. But I make that point because we have individuals presently that honorably serve in our military who are not U.S. citizens. We have individuals who work in our hospitals who are not U.S. citizens. We have teachers presently in the state of Nevada who are not U.S. citizens. In the most essential areas of society, the most essential areas of society, what we would say is critical for this society to work. We have non-citizens now honorably doing amazing work. If you go to gaming, for those of us who live down south, and we know how important our gaming industry is, they will tell you how many non-citizens keep those lights on, how many people pave our streets. I am saying if these individuals are doing so much and that this state would not function without their work, it is difficult for me to believe that we don't think that they could also participate in this conversation in a meaningful way by providing recommendations of what's happening in their community. There's a genuine investment. But also I just want to remind folk that the entire basis of what this country is started with a bunch of individuals who weren't born in the U.S. And the philosophy of what it means to be an American is more deeply rooted in a philosophy than it is in this identity politics of where you were born. And I remind folk of that often. In fact, we have a lot of individuals who weren't born in the U.S., but because their father or mother was honorably serving their country in a base outside of this country. They weren't born here, but they're still U.S. citizens. I'm just making all these points because there's a whole host of hypotheticals and real-life examples of why individuals are as important to the glue and the fabric of this community as any other individual, and it has nothing to do with citizenship, and it has more to do with who they are. What are they doing? What's their function? What are they contributing? How meaningful is their investment? And I will say, sitting in Las Vegas is Andres Rodriguez. He will be testifying in support of the bill. He ran my campaign. He's a campaign manager, he's director, policy. I call him everything. He's not yet a U.S. citizen. He's a doctoral candidate. I guarantee you he's going to be a member of this body in the future. Why not have an individual with his level of talent, who has a master's degree, who's a doctoral student, and he's also teaching courses at UNLV, someone of that magnitude, of that talent, who cares so much about the community, why not have him now get involved? He's already doing it on the political side, on the political campaign side, as a volunteer. Why not have him, who's living amongst the community, to also utilize that as a platform to eventually get him to a role that we're all in? Every single person sitting here, I would argue, did not start their political career as a legislator. It probably started in some council, in some board, in some community involvement, maybe in their school. All political candidates, I assure you, started their campaign 15 years ago, 10 years ago. It's not when you put your name on a ballot. What I am saying is that there are phenomenal human beings in the state of Nevada who are not yet citizens, and immigration status is very fluid. They're eventually going to become citizens. Why not get them started early? Get them involved early in something as simple and innocent as an advisory council that will eventually become that platform for that individual to become something more. And that's what I am asking. Plus, we desperately need it. We have too many boards that don't have enough candidates, and if we have some individuals in the community that want to step up, let's do it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll say for the record, when I received my Purple Heart, I wasn't a citizen. I was a green card holder. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Assemblyman. We'll go back to Assemblywoman Newby.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think Mr. Powers has an answer on that 266 question that he wanted to get on the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, for the record, Kevin Powers, Committee Counsel. The provisions that Assemblywoman Newby refers to in Chapter 266 do not deal with holding public office. They deal with the eligibility to sign a petition to incorporate a new city. And what the definition provides that under those provisions is that a qualified elector means a person who is a registered voter and is a resident of the area. However, in order to be a registered voter, you first have to be a qualified elector. So what this is really a definition for qualified voter to sign a petition. You have to be a qualified elector and a registered voter in order to sign a petition to incorporate a new city. Unfortunately, the term is used qualified elector here. If I was drafting it, it would have been qualified voter. But this was drafted in 1987, and despite all my gray hair, I was not advising this body in 1987. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Committee members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Senator. We will open up testimony in support of, what bill are we on? Senate Bill 262. So please come to the table. Don't forget to press the microphone button. Friendly reminder that some of those buttons stick, so you might have to push it a couple times. State and spell your name for the record slowly, and you may begin when ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Gorlow and members of the committee. My name is Paul Catha, and I represent the Culinary Workers Union Local 226. As the largest organization of immigrants in the state of Nevada, the Culinary Union supports Senate Bill 262, and the union would like to thank Senator Flores for bringing the bill forward. Culinary Union members come from 178 countries, and many U.S.-born culinary members have household members who are immigrants. By disqualifying the hundreds of thousands of non-citizens who live in Nevada from serving on non-elected bodies, the state is losing out on valuable talent and ensuring that its citizen advisory councils and town advisory boards are not representative of Nevada's neighborhoods. The Culinary Union supports SB 262 and urges the committee to support and pass the bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. We are here today in support of SB 262. We should allow our immigrant community members to be a part of town boards and councils. Allowing non-citizens to be members of town councils can have several benefits. Non-citizens bring different cultural backgrounds, experiences, and viewpoints, enriching the decision-making process. This diversity can lead to more comprehensive and inclusive policies that address the needs and concerns of all residents. Non-citizens are often long-term residents who contribute to their communities in various ways. Allowing them to participate in local governance ensures that their voices are heard and that their interests are represented, promoting a more inclusive and equitable society. For these reasons and many other reasons, we urge you to support SB 262. Thank you.
Chris Anderson with Sala Consulting for the record. As someone who has served on a community HOA board, I've seen firsthand how hard it is to get a diverse group of perspectives in any kind of advisory or even decision-making body. And look, we have friends and neighbors who are willing to lend their experience and their perspective, and I just think we're really losing out if we don't allow them to take part in these processes. So I urge you to support SB 262. Thank you.
Hello, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Rico Ocampo, R-I-C-O, space O-C-A-M-P-O. I am part of the large net that Senator Flores mentioned. I am a DACA recipient. I arrived in the United States in 1992 when I was 3 years old. And I've had the pleasure of dedicating my life to nonprofit. I first started working with foster youth for 3 years, and then I went to work with students experiencing homelessness for another 3 years. And I couldn't get enough of it, so I wanted to do more advocacy work. And I'm now doing immigration advocacy, fighting for immigrant families. And in 2017, I became the co-chair for the Project Homeless Connect Youth and Young Adult section, because I care about my community, even though I'm not eligible to vote. Last year, in 2021, I was selected to be a part of the external anti-racism, equity, and inclusion task force member. That was a privilege for me to be able to give back to my community in that way of public service. And so when Senator Edgar Flores talks about casting this wide net, I am that wide net. But unfortunately, sometimes society will only judge me because of my status, my immigration status. And I want to say, what a privilege it would be if I could get the opportunity to serve on an advisory council. I would jump on that opportunity because it'll remind me of the work that I love, the community that I call home. I am battle-born. I am a Nevadan. I have my roots here in this state. And I am American as a street taco. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Samuel Cando for the record. I'm here to support SB 262. I'm a member leader of Make the Road Nevada, also an undocumented student at the College of Southern Nevada. I have been getting involved with my community ever since high school in student council. Last year, I had the opportunity to travel to Washington, D.C. to lobby in support of the immigration reform. I love being involved. I love making a change. And despite my immigration status, I would love to make a change one day here in this country, which has given me so much. I urge you to support 262. Thank you.
Tony Ramirez for the record. I just want to ditto the comments by my colleague Rico and our member Samwen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in Carson City who would like to come to the table in support of SB 262? Okay, seeing none, we will go down to Las Vegas. Whoever wants to begin may start when you're ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Andres Rodriguez, ANDRES-RODRIGUEZ. I am 28 years old. I was born in Spain. I am half Spaniard and half Ecuadorian. I'm a PhD student in public affairs at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and I'm currently on an F1 student visa. I got my bachelor's degree in economics and in communication from the University of California, Davis, a master's in business administration, and a master's in management information systems from UNLV. Now I'm on my third year of PhD in public affairs at UNLV, and I'm currently the elected president of the UNLV Young Democrats for 2023 to 2024. I firmly believe that the US is the greatest country in the world. That's why I came here. I have always wanted to be involved in politics because I want to help change the things that are wrong and help keep the things that are right. Additionally, I have received a lot of help in my life, and I want to give back so people in Nevada can have the same or better opportunities like the ones that I've had. This is why my studies were oriented toward public affairs, and I'm getting involved as much as I can in day-to-day politics. I will be a citizen of this great nation someday, and I would like a head start with Bill SB 262. Thank you very much for your time.
Hello, Chair and members of the committee. My name is David Beltran Barajas, DAVID-BELTRAN-BARAJAS. Here representing PLAN, the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, here in support of SB 262. I've lived in my current area since 2005 and been a homeowner in that area since 2021. I've worked hard to develop relationships, be a friend and a helping hand in my neighborhood and local community. SB 262 would expand positions on citizen advisory boards to people who are not qualified electors like myself and many of my neighbors. Passage of this bill would further welcome folks of varying backgrounds that have been members of their local communities, and grant them the ability to take on co-governing roles in towns and neighborhoods they have been so deeply integrated with. As an immigrant who has lived in Nevada all my life, I want nothing more than to aid and serve this state that has been my home. I know there are many other Nevadans who are in similar situations that would love to continue to serve and lead in their own local towns and neighborhoods. The expansion of these requirements would bring in more qualified members of diverse backgrounds with diverse perspectives, further strengthening our towns and Nevada as a whole. Due to all this, I strongly urge the members of the committee to vote in favor of this bill. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Aria Flores, ARIAFLORES, and I'm here on behalf of Chispa, Nevada, and we are in support of AB 262. We would just like to ditto everything that everyone has testified previously to us. And then on a personal capacity, I would also like to testify. AB 262, just hearing everyone's testimonies and support, it just sends me a rush of just hope. Being able to go give presentations at high schools to the youth, the hardest part is always having to have a student tell me, well, what if I can't vote? How can I get involved? How can I be a leader? How can I get ahead? And I want to be able to give them as many resources and be able to tell them, hey, you know what? You can actually be a part of this advisory board, or, there's other options. And so AB 262 would just give all these youth and high school students just hope of being able to get involved in different ways. Thank you for your time.
Hello, chairs and committee. My name is Tessie Angel Ramirez. That is spelled Teissy. I am the lawful individual you guys are speaking of. I am recognized by the law or rules. I am also a student at CSN, and I'm in the student government position. What I'm hearing today is that in the future, if I want to proceed with public service or public policy, anything of service that I have been doing in the community, I'm going to be denied. I just quit my full-time job to be able to do my hobby, advocacy for immigrants like myself. So I am in full support of AB 262. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all very much for your testimony. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas who would like to testify in support? Seeing none, broadcasting, do we have anyone on the telephone?
To testify in support of Senate Bill 262, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good evening, Chair Gorlow and members of the Legislative Operations and Elections Committee. My name is Deanna Hua Tran. That's DEANNA space HUA space TRAN. And I'm the Coalition Coordinator for the Nevada Immigrant Coalition here on behalf of the coalition. The Nevada Immigrant Coalition consists of diverse organizations from across the state that work together to fight for immigration reform and immigrant justice. And the NIC is here in strong support of Senate Bill 262. A community member's background or citizenship should not be a reflection of the level of investment they may have in the welfare of their community, neighborhood, or their fellow residents. We have residents that have been here for many years and have raised their families and watched their children grow in our communities, and their lived experiences within the state should be promoted through their leadership on these boards. Many of our local advisory boards already experience a lack of active participation and enrollment for residents, and discouraging residents from the opportunity to engage in these local leadership roles not only diminishes the effectiveness of these boards, but also limits the representation that should exist for our diverse communities. We urge the committee to please support SB 262, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Broadcasting, next call.
Good afternoon, members of the committee and Chair Gurlow. For the record, my name is Victor Salcido, SALCIDO, and I'm here on behalf of Community Health Alliance, which is a federally qualified health center in Washoe County with 6 locations. And we serve over 27,000 patients in Washoe County. At first blush, it might seem a little odd that we're in this committee right now, but I'm also here representing not only those 27,000 patients, but we have a staff of over 250 individuals. And I know from personal experience that close to 24 of them are here as legal residents, working here legally, living here legally, paying taxes here. And I can also speak to the amount of talent that is among those individuals. Washoe County, the city of Reno, the city of Sparks, the state of Nevada would all be lucky to have them serve on a volunteer basis in these capacities. On a personal level, like Senator Flores, my father spent many years as a legal permanent resident. And I could also say anyone would be lucky to have someone like that serve in any kind of advisory capacity at a minimum. Because of that, we at Community Health Alliance, in support of our employees and in support of our patients, are here in support of SB 262. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting, next caller.
If you have recently joined and would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 262, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no other callers to testify in support.
Thank you very much, Broadcasting. We will close testimony in support and open up testimony in opposition. We'll start in Carson City. If there's anyone who would like to testify in opposition, please come to the table. If there's anyone in Las Vegas, you can come to the table and be ready as well. And one of you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Janine Hansen, the state chairman of the Independent American Party. We are very concerned about this bill because it's just the beginning. This isn't a place we're going to stop. This is going to allow us to go forward. This bill allows non-citizens not only to serve on town boards, but it allows them to be elected at the ballot. Now, if they can be elected, the next step is why shouldn't they be able to vote? And so we hear all these very nice people coming up here with a lot of great qualifications, and that's wonderful that they've come and that they appreciate our country. But we all believe in abiding by the rules, and the rule is that in the Nevada Constitution defines that a qualified elector is a citizen qualified to vote. And this is very important, and this is a very important red line. And many people are concerned about it because this bill will set a very dangerous precedent. And there's nothing in it that prevents illegal aliens. And we heard there's going to be an amendment, but we haven't seen it yet, from participating in these processes, not just legal non-citizens. So one of the things I mentioned in the last session, the last hearing that we had, is that we've had many non-citizens come and testify to the legislature, expressing their concerns and participating, I'm sure, on local county commissions and cities. They do have a voice. They do have an opportunity to participate, just like I come here. I'm not elected to office, but I come. So I do have an opportunity to do that. I do want to say that I particularly appreciated Mr. Powers' explanation of how this would have to be bifurcated in order to be able to abide by the Constitution and the laws, and that's very important. But we are very concerned about the dangerous precedent this sets. Thank you.
Yolanda Kanak, Yolanda, last name Knaak. I think that there's some misunderstanding why we don't have enough people, citizens, on our CABs or other boards. And I believe it's because of a lack of advertising, a lack of promoting the boards. I don't think it has anything to do with we don't have enough citizens to, or enough citizens that want to take those seats. So I'm opposed to this bill. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Joy Trushinsky for the record. Please vote no on SB 262. Non-citizens and illegal aliens should not be able to be appointed or elected to serve on town boards. Our Nevada Constitution defines what a qualified elector is, and that is a citizen. That is how it should remain. Illegal aliens broke our immigration laws and committed a felony. We should not be giving non-citizens and illegal aliens the same privileges as American citizens. This bill goes against the Nevada Constitution and is not lawful. Our borders have been open for several years under Democrat administrations. Currently, our borders are illegally open and millions are crossing into our country and are not being vetted. This is so unfair to those who are trying to come here legally. Why have laws if they are not followed? Why have a Nevada Constitution if that is also not followed? I support the rule of law and legal immigration, but I do not support SB 262, which is opening the door and it goes against American citizens. Thank you for your time.
Hi, Katrin Ivanov, Ivanoff, aka Mrs. Fixit. I live in Assembly District 42, Senate District 9. And I'm here to express my disappointment with the some of you that think a lot more about the people that did not elect you to come here. You supposed to represent the people that elected you, and sometimes that may not coincide with what you guys want to do. If you listen to the voices of your constituents, I honestly don't know how anybody thinks that we Nevadans want to give our rights away to people that came to Nevada illegally. We should not have illegals on the boards and making rules or laws for the legal citizens of Nevada. If we don't have enough people, it's because people are turned off of politic games and turn off of politics, period. So maybe we should do something to engage our citizens into the political rules and what we need. I personally am trying to implore as many people as possible to join the political process, not only to run for offices, but also to just engage and support candidates that they agree with, regardless of which side of the aisle those people are. We just need people to get more involved and not just vote straight on R or D line. They should know who they're actually voting for and who they're putting in office to make the laws. And that bill is a very clear reason why they should know who they're putting in office, because right now the people they put in office, whoever presented this bill, are not really presenting the interests of Nevadans. They're working on the interests of people that didn't elect them. So please vote no. Please think about the people that actually elected you and vote no on this bill. Thank you and have a lovely day.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in Carson City who would like to testify in opposition? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to Las Vegas. I see a couple people starting to come to the table, so whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Leslie Quinn, and hello all legislators, lovely afternoon. I oppose AB 262 and ditto all current opposition. I am also Hispanic, and I realize that it is difficult when you come to any country and you are trying to gain your citizenship, but I think it should be done correctly. It is an honor to live in the United States of America, and I don't take that lightly, and I am grateful for that opportunity for all young people that have been doing this the right way, or anybody that does it the right way. I welcome you. I oppose again AB 262 and ask my legislators, Assemblywoman Brittany Miller and my Senator Marilyn Dawn-Daraloop, to stand with me and oppose AB 262 as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas who would like to testify in opposition? Okay, seeing none, broadcasting, is there anyone on the telephone?
To testify in opposition to Senate Bill 262, please press star 9 now to take your place.
Good evening, everyone. CYRUSHOJJATY. I'm really glad that this issue is being brought up because I've had many quality talks with Commissioner Sickerbloom and Senator about this issue on immigration. Now, when he brings up culinary union, it further proves me what I've been trying to point out for many years, that they are pushing, or non-citizens are being used to gain more power. And it makes me feel like, well, perhaps these claims that they show that they do vote is actually true, because 8 News now interviewed a DACA recipient in 2020 that was voting. And yet still, I haven't been told why we have such a high rate of non-citizens, illegal aliens that are actually voting in this election. To me, it is a disgrace that you are giving foreign nationals more power in our elected form of government. This, to me, is taxation without representation. In fact, we've had many people who are paid, I can show you the ads, that are brought here to support these measures. Many of them who are non-citizens could be illegal aliens, as a matter of fact. I mean, if this is the case, we should call the authorities. What is the point of then becoming a U.S. citizen? Sort of like asking, what's the point of passing an exam? I don't really trust the Culinary Union. They've supported many politicians who are in bed with large casino elites, other non-governmental organizations, wealthy billionaires. They were the ones that pushed this whole COVID era with the vaccine. And given the border crisis, we've had so many apprehensions by the millions. What are we doing? Are we giving cartels more power? You are telling people that people can come here illegally tomorrow by the tens of thousands, and this can affect our board. Not to mention, we have state, Senate, Assembly, county line, city council that are affected by population, which includes illegal aliens and not U.S. citizens. Not to mention, if their children are born, they're automatic U.S. citizens. We have politicians who are given birth.
Mr. Hajati, you've reached your 2 minutes. Can you please wrap it up?
Is out of touch. Give me 15 seconds, please. It's dysfunctional. We need to instead add more commissioners, break up the county. We need to add more city government. Our entire structure is increasingly flawed. I vote you to. Please don't support this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling in. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Hi, my name is Lisa Partee, P as in Paul, A-R-T as in Tom, E-E, and I want to echo the gentleman that just spoke. He said volumes. I'm sorry, but to be in this country illegally is treasonous in its own right. So please do not try and take over our government while not having earned the right by becoming a U.S. citizen first and foremost. Of all of these pro-illegal alien bills this session, you never hear any of them at the hearings mention them actually wanting to become a part of our country. All you hear is demand and demand to get free medical, driver's licenses, and now they want to sit on the boards and dictate to us how we live, those of us who are U.S. citizens. They work here and send their money home to their families, so they're not paying their fair share and getting away with it. Where's the bills that stop that from happening? The Declaration of Candidacy has them affirm that they've not committed treason, but they are just being here. Enough of this madness. Our Nevada Constitution defines what a qualified elector is, and that is a citizen. That is how it should remain. You took an oath to protect the Constitution from enemies foreign and domestic. These people fall under those categories, and you are committing treason as well if you pass this bill. This goes against our state and federal constitution, and I'm really curious as to where the LCB is in allowing all these bills to come forward. These should not be being heard this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting, next caller.
Hello, my name is Michael Ryan, M-I-C-H-A-E-L-R-Y-A-N. I'm a longtime resident of Nevada and a Marine Corps veteran. I implore you to vote no on SB 262. Non-citizens and illegal aliens should not, capital N-O-T, not be able to be appointed or elected to serve on town boards. Our Nevada Constitution defines what a qualified elector is, and that is a citizen, and that is how it should remain. Please vote no on this horrible bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Thank you, Chair Gorlow and members of the committee. My name is Jim DeGraffenried, and I'm Nevada's Republican National Committee man testifying in opposition to SB 262 on behalf of the Nevada Republican Party. This may well be one of the craziest bills we've testified against in this or any other session. The very concept of enabling non-citizens to serve on a body called a Citizens Advisory Board is nonsensical on its face. Our platform is very clear on the subject of immigration. We welcome people from all nations, races, and cultures who enter our country legally and support the Constitution and our rule of law. We support annual merit-based immigration and naturalization levels that maintain sustainable employment and wage growth for all Americans. Part of our solid support of legal immigrants, those who follow the rules and enter by the front door, is making sure that their hard work and effort is not cheapened by giving the same benefits and advantages to those who chose not to make the same effort. SB 262 is a slap in the face to legal immigrants who could well find themselves subject to policies proposed by those who are not citizens. It makes no sense to give individuals who aren't even eligible to vote in an election the ability to serve on an advisory board. To do so is a first step to having non-citizen council members or more. If I moved to a foreign country, any foreign country, and attempted to become an elected or appointed government official, or to even vote for any elected officials, I'd quickly be shown the door. It wouldn't be acceptable there, and it's absolutely not acceptable here. Opposing SB 262 is just plain Nevada common sense. I hope the committee and legislators will oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting. Next caller, please.
If you have recently joined and would like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 262, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no other callers to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much, Broadcasting. We will close the testimony on opposition, open up testimony in neutral. Is there anyone in Carson City who would like to testify in neutral? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to Las Vegas. Is there anyone who would like to testify in neutral? Seeing none, Broadcasting, is there anyone on the telephone?
To testify in neutral for Senate Bill 262, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you very much. We will close testimony in neutral and invite the bill sponsor to the table for final remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Edgar Flores for the record, representing Senate District 2. I wanted to first start off by thanking those who spoke in opposition. I sincerely believe that folk are passionate about this subject matter and everybody should be authorized and should be heard. And I believe that so wholeheartedly that I have a bill that I think achieves that. I want to make 2 points. I agree with the argument that the opposition brought up that we need to do more to activate Nevadans to get involved in our councils, boards, et cetera. We really do. We need to activate more people to run for office. I think we need to have larger pools of folk running for office. We need to bring more diversity of thought. I believe that to be 100% true. But that's not in conflict with this bill. Unfortunately, that is something collectively we all have to do, but that's not the bill that I'm bringing forth. We all have a responsibility to really engage more Nevadans and that they realize that they have a responsibility to be more involved, but this bill does not address that in any way. Furthermore, I want to remind folk that if advisory boards were as powerful as everybody claims, if we're giving all these powers to folk, then everybody would be running for them. The opposite is true. Because they don't yield any power, what we're seeing is that, unfortunately, folk don't want to get involved because it's a huge undertaking. It takes a lot of time. It's a tremendous amount of responsibility. You have families. You don't have time for this. So what I am saying is we need to allow more folk in the community to get involved. And the other thing I just wanted to bring up, I also appreciate the remarks and the sentiment about breaking the law, and people are concerned about that. But again, I just wanted to remind everybody that with my conceptual amendment, we're focusing on folk who are lawfully authorized to be in the U.S. And this bill is not breaking the law. In fact, I'm changing it. The very fact that I am here is to remind folk that every single one of us here have a responsibility to represent every Nevadan, not just U.S. citizens. That we have a responsibility and obligation to listen to every Nevadan, not just those we care because they happen to be born here. We have a responsibility to ensure that everybody is eating, everybody has education, everybody has access to take care of themselves, everybody has an opportunity to open up their own business. That is our obligation. And I agree 100% that we should ensure that everybody has a right to speak here. I've been in this room and people speak in different languages. We have a lot of our folk from our tribes. They come up here and we have made it abundantly clear that this space belongs to the people. What I am saying is, and the opposition is in agreement with me. They said everybody should be able to come up and speak. What I am saying is we should open up as many available avenues for folk to be heard. That is all an advisory council is. It is an opportunity to be heard. It yields no power, and it is recommendations that are being sent up for somebody who was elected to do X, Y, Z. That is simply what we're saying. And so that may bother folk, but that is why I got elected. I am specifically here making it abundantly clear that it is my mission and role in this body to ensure that every Nevadan feels there is somebody who actually cares about them and that they are listening. And that's why folk elected me. And with that, Madam Chair, I sincerely appreciate your time. I appreciate this body's time. I will yield. I don't know if Commissioner Sager-Bloom would like to make any additional remarks.
Thank you. Just very quickly, Edgar, and I can just say, having listened to this, it makes me want to cry. I mean, the people that want to serve us should be allowed to serve. They can work in the government. Ruben, has a Purple Heart when he wasn't a citizen. I mean, these are the bread and butter of Nevada. These are our neighbors, and the fact that we would not allow them to serve on an advisory committee like this and give me advice, to me is wrong. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Senator and Commissioner. We appreciate you being here. And with that, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 262. And I would like to, for a moment, Senator Orenshaw, we're going to go to our work session because we have a couple members, so I appreciate your patience as we kind of jump around a little bit on our agenda. So we're going to go to the work session for AB 243, and I will turn it over to our policy analyst, Ms. Pro.
Thank you, Chair. Haley Prohl, Committee Policy Analyst, Nonpartisan Staff with the LCB. Assembly Bill 243 is sponsored by this committee on behalf of the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. It was heard in committee on March 16th. It makes various changes to the Joint Interim Standing Committees of the Legislature. There are 3 proposed amendments for this bill. One amendment proposed by Vice Chair Miller. It was proposed during the March 16th bill hearing to prohibit legislators who are serving their last term, whether based on term limits or not seeking election to remain in the legislature, from serving as chair or vice chair of an interim committee. The second amendment is from the Legislative Counsel Bureau. It proposes to revise the Nevada Lobbying Disclosure and Regulation Act and the Nevada Financial Disclosure Act with regard to, 1, legislators, legislative officers, and staff members who undertake or attend legislative committee investigative meetings, events, or trips, and 2, legislative officers and staff members who undertake or attend other educational or informational meetings, events, or trips. There is an attachment A, for more details on this amendment. And there's a third amendment from this committee which proposes several additional changes to the interim structure of the legislature. And I won't go through them all, but there is an additional attached summary, attachment B, and mock-up language, attachment C, for this amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, any comments or questions? Vice Chair Miller.
Thank you so much, Chair Gorlow. And I just want to, Ms. Prohl, I'm not sure if it would be a personal amendment at this time or just a point of clarification. But in the amendment, as written, I understand it's brought there is a challenge to not knowing during an interim committee at that time someone's decision to seek re-election. The intent of the bill was because interim committees are designed to prepare for the next legislative session. And so with the bill that revamped the entire interim session last session, one of the lessons learned is that we had instances where chairs that were not returning, there were legislators chairing, but they were not able to return, and so not able to continue the work and the planning that they had done. So with that, would it be okay if I just crossed out the one clause that said whether based on term limits or not seeking election to remain in the legislature? I guess the point is it doesn't matter why they're not returning, and in some cases, if someone's termed out, we understand they're not coming back, but if there's cases where people make decisions at all times not to seek re-election. So would that be suffice to move the amendment forward?
Haley Prohl, for the record, I would defer to legal to make sure that is good to go, but if you have a proposed change to that amendment, we can adopt that new amendment today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Kevin Powers, Committee Counsel. It is my understanding that the underlying intent of the amendment is to deal with the legislator who has been termed out in both houses and is incapable of running for re-election for any legislative seat. If the amendment was limited to just a legislator who was termed out in both houses, that certainly would be a draftable amendment because it wouldn't matter if they ran for re-election. You could also have the amendment apply to someone who was termed out in their own house, regardless of whether they planned on running for election to the other house. That's a clear situation where you could define by statute. But as far as whether or not they're going to run for re-election, as you mentioned, these decisions about committee chairs are made in the summer after the session, but the declarations of candidacy aren't filed till the following March. So there would be no way to know whether or not they will actually be running for re-election.
Does that satisfy?
Yeah.
Please go ahead, Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the discussion. Having been the one who made a lot of these appointments over the last interim, they are made pretty early. I think I like what Mr. Powers was recommending, that I think because the way that this works, it alternates from interim to interim. So if the Senate chairs a committee one interim, then the Assembly will chair it the next interim, and same with the vice chairs. So I think it would make more sense to say that if you're termed out in your own house, that you're not eligible to serve as either the chair or vice chair. We won't know which one because it's going to depend on which interim we're in. I think that's probably easier because the truth is most legislators aren't going to get to 12 years in both houses. That's just the reality of where we are now. So, Madam Vice Chair, if you were willing to have that be the concept under proposed amendment number 1, I think that would really work and would certainly be supportive of that.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. I absolutely agree. And so if we could have that drafted as such.
Thank you very much. Committee, do we have any other questions? We'll say on Amendment 1. And Amendment 2 and 3, we do have Mr. Powers and Mr. Ziegler that can answer questions on those. So does anyone have questions or comments on those? Okay. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I don't have a question, but I did just want to thank, we did the bill last session to reform the interim process, and I think it was a real learning experience for all of us. I think it's working, but I appreciate the work that's gone into this mock-up to address problems that we figured out during the interim when we went through the structure. So I wanted to thank Mr. Ziegler and Mr. Powers in particular for helping us through some of these amendments. And I think what's going to happen with this is we're going to continue to refine this process, and hopefully the interim legislative process actually helps us get ready in a real way for the next legislative process. So not a question, but just obviously supportive of what we're doing.
Thank you very much. Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Given that this bill is looking at revamping the interim committees, amendment number 1 and 3 seem to make a lot of sense. I'm not seeing how amendment number 2 fits into that. It looks like it's bringing in a completely different topic. I just would like some clarification on that.
Mr. Powers, when you get a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, for the record, Kevin Powers, Committee Counsel. I will interpret that question as whether or not the amendment fits within the single subject requirement under the Nevada Constitution for this particular bill, AB 243. The title of the bill is an act relating to legislative affairs. Under the single subject requirement, every provision of the bill must relate to legislative affairs, but not every provision of the bill must relate to each other. So under the single subject requirement in Article 4 of the Constitution, this would comply with the single subject requirement if the committee decides to include the amendment proposed by the Legislative Council Bureau. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Any other comments or discussions? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 243 with the changes in Amendment number 1.
So moved.
I have a first from Assemblywoman Miller. Do I have a second? And a second from Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Any comments or questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Okay, motion carries, and we will give this a floor statement to Assemblyman De Silva. You're very welcome. All right, we will go back now to Senate Bill 404. Thank you, Senator Orenshaw, for your patience. Welcome, welcome, and you may begin when ready.
Chair, members of the committee, James Orenshaw, represent State Senate District 21. Really an honor to be here in front of the Legislative Operations Elections Committee. I had the honor of serving on this committee for 6 regular sessions under some really great chairs, including for Commissioner Segerblum, who was one of our past chairs of this committee, and great to be here. Thank you for hearing Senate Bill 404. Senate Bill 404, I think the Assembly owes me a big debt of gratitude because we amended it over in the Senate and we took out 66 sections. So it's a lot less to read than the original version that we introduced. I believe it's very good policy that will be good for our constituents and good for the process of participating in our democracy. With your permission, Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Carrie Dermick, who's to my right, Dr. Isaac Tenorio to my left, and I believe on Zoom we have Lata Knott from the Campaign Legal Center who will be available to assist with questions, and I'm here to answer questions. But with your permission, if I could turn it over to Ms. Dermick and Dr. Tenorio, and then I'm happy to answer any questions.
First, on behalf of this committee, we'd like to thank you for that amendment. And you will begin when you're ready.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Gerlow and members of the committee. My name is Carrie Dermick. I'm the Nevada State Director of All Voting is Local Action. So in the summer of 2022, Campaign Legal Center and All Voting is Local Action worked together on concepts and ideas to strengthen Nevada's election system. All Voting is Local Action brought these concepts to Senator Orenshaw, and this is how SB 404 was created. I'll be discussing sections 5 and 27, which provide guardrails when challenging voters in Nevada. In 2020 and 2022, we saw bad actors in several states use voter challenges as a tool to intimidate and harass voters. This bill would strengthen Nevada's voter challenges laws so that bad actors would not be able to use voter challenges to intimidate voters and protects all eligible voters in Nevada. Current law states that if a voter is challenged based on their address, the voter may only vote a regular ballot if the voter signs an oath that they actually reside at that address and provides satisfactory identification that proves this is true. While current law simply states that a voter must furnish satisfactory identification to prove their residency, it does not define that term beyond stating that a voter registration card does not suffice. This creates confusion for challenged voters and election officials and workers who have to adjudicate these challenges. Section 5 and Section 27 clarify what satisfactory identification is. These sections clarify that satisfactory identification includes, but is not limited to, a current and valid Nevada driver's license or ID card, military ID, tribal ID, a utility bill, bank statement, paycheck, tax return, mortgage lease statement, and really any other document issued by a government agency. These sections clarify how a challenged voter could defend themselves and provides a challenged voter with a provisional ballot under perjury if they cannot provide a satisfactory identification at the time of the challenge. This provision makes sure no voter is disenfranchised if they are challenged and do not have the satisfactory identification on hand. Also, these sections help to eliminate any confusion surrounding challenges to mail ballots, clarifying that in the currently accepted process that they may not be challenged. And I will now pass it to Isaac to go over the other sections.
Chair Gorlow and members of the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections, Isaac Tenorio with Strategy 60, today presenting for Campaign Legal Center. I will be presenting sections 8 and section 28 of the bill. During the 2020 election cycle, we saw partisan actors use delays in processing and tabulating ballots to convince supporters that results were fraudulent. These arguments were being used in Nevada to question the validity of the election in Nevada. SB 404 addresses this risk. Currently, Nevada's election and code regulations provide for advanced processing and tabulation of mail ballots, but only allow early in-person ballots to be counted after 8 a.m. on Election Day. SB 404 would allow county clerks to begin processing and counting early in-person ballots during the early voting period. The proposed legislation will allow for no later than the first day of early voting, the city clerk may order the appropriate board to begin the count of the returns for early voting. This gives autonomy to the county clerks or the registrar of voters to start counting early, and it adds another tool in their toolbox. This provision will help prevent partisan actors from capitalizing on delays in results from late ballot processing to undermine confidence in Nevada's election. This provision will have the additional overall benefit of allowing officials to provide results to Nevada voters more quickly. This is an issue that Nevada came under scrutiny during the 2020 election. And I will now turn it to Senator Orenshaw.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank Dr. Tenorio, thank Ms. Dermick, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, committee members, do you have any questions? Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you again, Chair. Couple of, one to comment, and then I've got a question. Under, what is it, section, I guess it's section 5, you ran through a list of documents that are acceptable, we'll call them government-issued documents. However, a utility bill, a bank or credit card statement, a paycheck, or even a tax return aren't government documents. So if the intent is to have government documents, this list is inappropriate and includes documents that shouldn't be there. But what I'm more concerned about is section 8 and 28, where we're looking at starting to count ballots before people are done voting. And given how information leaks in this country, the chance that early votes that are being counted gets released before people are done voting is to me a big concern. My question then is, what states or what other countries start counting votes before people are done voting?
Thank you. James Orenshaw, State Senate District 21. Through you, Chair Gorolo, to Assemblyman DeLong. First, I wanted to point.
I'm sorry, please just go direct.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Assemblyman DeLong. It's section 5, the list of documents that that you pointed to in terms of a challenge of residency. So, challenge of residency is, let's say, you and I are neighbors. We both have lived on Sycamore Street for 20 years, and Election Day comes, and I'm standing in line behind you, and you suddenly say, "Wait, James sold his house 6 months ago, and I heard he moved to Cleveland. And why is he here? Why is he in line voting?" And you're challenging my residence. You're not challenging that I am James Orenshaw. You're challenging that I still live on Sycamore Street in that precinct and should be voting. These are to establish residency. It's not as to a challenge to identification. These parallel very closely documents already in statute for same-day voter registration at NRS 293.5837 that includes things like a utility bill without limitation, a bill for electric, gas, oil, water, sewer, septic, telephone, cellular, telephone, or cable TV, bank or credit union statement, a paycheck, an income tax return, a statement regarding your mortgage, rental, or lease of a residence, motor vehicle registration, property tax statement, or any other document issued by a governmental agency. And I'm reading from NRS 293.5837. That's for supplementing residency for that same day voter registration. So this parallels that. The only thing new that's added is the tribal identification card that's not in that other statute. So that, I believe, those are documents which, even the ones that are not government issued, can go to support that. Let's say I still live on Sycamore. Maybe I rented it out, maybe I'm back, but maybe there's some good reason that I should be voting and I still live there, and even though you thought I moved, maybe I didn't move. Maybe we're not as close neighbors as we thought we were. As to your question regarding Section 8, the goal behind that, to begin the counting of the early votes on or after the first day of early voting, is to try to take some of the burden off clerks, registrars as to having that mass of ballots to try to cast right after polls close on Election Day. So this is to try to help deal with that and get returns a little quicker. The same penalty that's in the law now as to divulging any of the information, gross misdemeanor, is still applicable. And that it says it's still applicable in statute that the returns for early voting must not be reported until after the polls have closed on election day. There would still be a gross misdemeanor penalty if anyone were to leak information like that. As to your other question, as to what other states allow counting of early votes, that's one I don't have an answer to, but I'm going to phone a friend and see if maybe someone does. If not, I'm happy to try and get that info and provide it to the committee later, but maybe someone does, but if
I'm
not,
not sure if, am I visible right now? I can hear myself, so I'm going to assume that I am.
Yes, please go ahead.
My name is Letha Knott. Thank you. My name is Letha Knott. I'm a senior legal counsel at the Campaign Legal Center. And off the top of my head, Arizona and Michigan do allow for early ballot processing. There are other states that do as well. I can definitely provide a more comprehensive list. I'd also just like to add that in Nevada, mail ballots are already processed before Election Day. They are counted. They are not allowed to have the results released, but they are processed and must actually be completely processed 7 days before the date of the election. This just applies the same logic to ballots that are cast early in person. And the bill specifies that this count will not take place in public because, as our good friends at the Legislative Council Bureau advised, making the counting public violates Nevada law because there's a crime in making returns public. So that was incorporated into the bill to make sure that there would not be leaks of results. Like mail ballots, early ballot results would be counted but unreleased before all votes were counted.
Thank you very much. And follow-up?
Yes, quick follow-up. 2 points on the response from the woman on Zoom. It's impossible to count all mail-in ballots but 7 days before election, since ballots can come in days after the election. So I'm not sure how that works. Prior to 2020...
I'm so sorry, I meant the 7th day.
Prior to 2020, we didn't seem to have many problems counting ballots. It wasn't until we started the mail-in ballot process that we started to have concerns about not getting the vote counted in time to make the voters happy. And so, to me, the system seems to be the mail-in ballot system rather than how we count.
And James Orchall, State Senate 21, Assemblyman DeLong, I appreciate your statement and your concern. I think I always, I want to make sure that the clerks, registrars have enough time to, accurately count all ballots. Certainly, it's frustrating when, we don't have returns election night the way we used to in the old days, but I think that the accuracy of the count and make sure every vote is counted is very important to me.
And I truly apologize. I meant that Nevada law allows mail ballots to be counted early 15 days before the date of the election. The counting must be completed on or before the 7th day following an election. But the ballots are begin being counted 15 days before the election.
Thank you very much. Committee members, any other questions? Yes, please go ahead, Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to apologize. I have to step out for another meeting, but I wanted to thank you so much, the three of you, for bringing this bill. I look forward to casting my vote on the floor in support of this bill. Thank you.
James Orchall, Senate 21. Thank you very much, Assemblywoman, and I've been lucky to work with some great people, great organizations, and love to claim all these ideas are mine, but they're not. And I appreciate your comments.
Thank you very much. And did I see Assemblyman Hibbets? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, for being here today. My question, it goes back to Section 8 and 28. We've had a lot of registrars come before us, both here and I also believe we had some in government affairs. And I have yet to hear a single one say anything about having trouble counting early votes because they're all computerized. And I'm not a technician. I don't know exactly what the process is, but early votes are counted on election night very quickly. They always have been since we started early voting. It's never been a problem. It's always been mail ballots. So why this section? Why not something that would actually make a difference?
James Orenshaw, Senate District 21, Assemblyman Hibbets, thanks for your question. And yes, I think we're all used to, since Nevada expanded early voting, started early voting, expanded it, getting those very initial returns and seeing how the early voting, numbers look. First, before we see Election Day ballots and mail ballots, I believe that this actually gives the clerks and registrars more flexibility to at least get that done beforehand so they can focus on all the other work, especially with big elections. We have our first presidential preference primary coming up. So I think this is, it's a small help, but I think it is a help in terms of reducing the workload from Election Day on for clerks and registrars. So I believe it is a help. I don't want to speak for the registrars, but I believe this will help them.
Isaac Troyer for the record, Strategy 60 representing Campaign Legal Center. I do want to point out this is also an opt-in option, so it does permit the counties to make that decision. So that's definitely super important to rural counties. They would adopt the best practice that suits them the best.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Committee members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. We will move on to testimony in support of SB 404. Again, remember to push the button 2 or 3 times, state and spell your name, and you may begin when ready.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress in support of SB 404. While Nevada has some of the safest elections in the nation, we need to ensure our election administration procedures are protected from bad actors. We have seen in recent elections how those bad actors can work to undermine the process after votes are cast. SB 404 will bring extra security into our election processes, which we should all support. Please support this legislation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in Carson City who would like to testify in support? Okay, seeing none, I see somebody coming to the table in Vegas. If there's anyone else, please feel free to come up to the table too, and you may begin when ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Happy Tuesday. For the record, my name is Aria Flores, ARIAFLORES. And I'm here on behalf of Chispa, Nevada with the Let Nevadans Vote Coalition, and we're in support of SB 404. SB 404 ensures that challenged voters can fulfill residency requirements by presenting a broad array of documents as satisfactory identification, including driver's license, utility bills, income tax returns, and more. This expanded definition acknowledges the diverse circumstances faced by individuals and demonstrates our state's commitment to fairness and upholding their voting rights. Additionally, this bill effectively safeguards mail-in voting, guaranteeing that a voter being challenged does not affect a voter's ability to exercise their right to vote. This provision is crucial in ensuring that every eligible voter can cast their ballot without unnecessary obstacles. Furthermore, SB 404 establishes a well-defined timeline for the counting of early voting returns. County and city clerks are empowered to commence this process no later than 8 a.m. on Election Day. By setting a clear expectation, we enhance transparency, promote efficiency, and deliver timely and accurate election results. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas? Okay, seeing none, broadcasting, is there anyone on the telephone?
To testify in support of Senate Bill 404, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. My name is Dayla Gibson, Daela Gibson, and I'm speaking on behalf of Planned Parenthood Marmonte, a member of the Let Nevadans Vote Coalition. We support this bill and ditto other statements in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Good evening, Chair Gurlow and committee members. For the record, my name is Emily Persantamora. That's spelled PERSAUT-ZAMORA. I have the privilege of being the executive director of Silver State Voices that also leads the Let Nevadans Vote Coalition. And today we're in strong support of SB 404. Existing law permits any registered voter to challenge an individual's eligibility to vote, and the person being challenged must present a satisfactory identification. However, current law does not explicitly define what qualifies as satisfactory identification. This bill aims to address this issue by establishing the same list that is required for same-day voter registration. Additionally, this bill grants the option for clerks to commence counting the returns from early voting either on or after the first date of early voting. If a clerk chooses not to initiate the counting process during the early voting period, they may do so no later than 8 a.m. on election day. It is important to note that this bill does not mandate or impose an obligation on clerks to count the returns earlier. Rather, it offers them the flexibility to begin the process sooner if they so choose to. We appreciate the work that All Voting is Local and Campaign Legal Center, along with Senator Orange Hall, have done around this bill, and we urge the committee to support SB 404. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Matthew Germer, Matthew and I am a fellow at the R Street Institute. R Street is a think tank devoted to research in support of free markets and limited effective government. I conduct research on election policy, and I'm here today in support of Senate Bill 404. With each election season, we have seen voters become more and more frustrated when the vote counting process proceeds slowly. Perhaps even more importantly, a slow counting process fuels conspiracy theories and misinformation as voters speculate about who won the race and why the canvassing process is taking so long. This is why I encourage you to prioritize faster vote counts without compromising on election security. Under Senate Bill 404, counties may choose to begin canvassing early voting ballots as they are received, bringing Nevada's process for counting early votes into alignment with the process for counting mail-in votes. Just over 1/4 of voters in 2022, nearly 300,000 Nevadans, cast a vote using early voting in Nevada, meaning Senate Bill 404 could substantially increase the speed of those results. Importantly, these tallies will be protected from disclosure by law, and this law should be and must be rigorously enforced in order to ensure that elections are trustworthy. Ultimately, Senate Bill 404 can help alleviate delays and produce faster results, and this is an administrative change that harms no one, benefits everyone, and provides flexibility to the local government. I encourage your support.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Hello, this is Soren Dayton, Soren Dayton. Thank you, Chairwoman Gorlow and members of the committee for allowing me to testify in favor of SB 404 and in particular provisions that allow for faster counting and increased confidence in elections. Briefly about me, I lead the governance program at the Niskanen Center, a center-right think tank in Washington, D.C. Previously, I served as the executive director of the Young Republican National Federation. I worked for John McCain's campaign for president in 2008 for a Republican member of Congress and on Republican campaigns around the country. Our primary interest in election policy is that administrators and legislators should take actions to increase voter confidence in elections. One guiding principle is that election results should be available accurately and quickly. By ensuring the public gets complete election results as quickly as possible, you limit public confusion about results. SB 404 has strong provisions that, if enacted, should increase the public's confidence in the vote counting process. The pre-canvassing provisions would allow, if a jurisdiction chooses, local election officials to pre-canvass early votes. There are several reasons that this is a good idea. First, SB 404's pre-canvassing provisions would align the treatment of early votes with the way mail ballots are handled. As you know, vote by mail is the majority of votes cast today. And in the same way, SB 404 simplifies that process by treating all votes cast before Election Day the same way. Second, SB 404's pre-canvassing provisions allow local election administrators more flexibility in how they manage elections. They have an enormously challenging job. If they can do some work before Election Day, that leaves Election Day to manage in-person voting and counting of those votes. and mail ballots that come in on election day. This allows election administrators to get out results more quickly. Third, it's still up to the local administrator. The pre-canvassing provisions are completely at the discretion of the administrators. If it doesn't help them manage their process or increase confidence, they don't have to implement them. Furthermore, SB 404 does not increase the risk for fraud. It's already illegal to disclose mail voting information. That's over half the ballots counted in the state. And though the provisions making that illegal will stay on the books. There are many legitimate reasons for disagreements on election policy, but pre-canvassing is a straightforward, common sense administrative step that should increase voter confidence in election results.
Sir, you've exceeded your 2 minutes.
Thank you for allowing me to share this perspective, and thank you for your work.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Broadcasting next caller, please.
If you have recently joined and would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 404, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to testify in support at this time.
Thank you very much. We will close testimony in support and open up testimony in opposition. You would like to come to the table in Carson City? And if there's anyone in Vegas, you are more than welcome to come to the table. We will get you in just a moment.
Yolanda Kanak, Yolanda, last name Knaak. Please vote no on SB 404. I have a big problem with Section 8. First of all, after listening to people and the proponents, they're throwing out terms like, oh, it's going to make election security. We're going to have accuracy on vote counts, and yet I don't see anything in this that's going to give any kind of election security. In fact, I think it's going to be the opposite, and that's why I'm opposed to it. I don't, we have enough trouble getting people to watch the polling counts on the day of the election, and now we're going to be getting those people to come early for early voting. And so I don't see anything that says it's going to be more secure or more accurate. In fact, I think it's the opposite. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Janine Hansen, and I will be speaking as the state chairman of the Independent American Party. This bill allows the election officials to start counting ballots on the first day of early voting. This is a dangerous practice which would allow leaked information by bad actors on whether a candidate is winning or losing to be used to be able to adjust a possible campaign with the results that may change the entire election. Now, we can't imagine that we won't have leaked information, because even the Supreme Court had leaked information where they never were able to even find the person that leaked the information, which was last year, which we were all aware of. And it would be highly prized leaked information by candidates who are running, and so we can expect that there would be many opportunities for that information to be leaked. One of the other problems I have with this, besides the fact that I think that that would occur, is that how will individual citizens be able to observe ballot counting starting on the very first day of early voting? It's hard enough to have people donate their time and go and look and see how the ballot process is happening. And this does not provide for that. How can they see and notice whether or not this process is really according to the state law when it's the entire time during the election process? They talked about rigorously enforcing this. I was good friends with the former Secretary of State. She often mentioned to me that it was very difficult to get, because the Secretary of State doesn't have any enforcement arm, and they must depend on the Attorney General for any kind of enforcement of election laws. This is another problem with this, because you won't have rigorous enforcement because you don't have the Secretary of State having any power to do that. So I think this will certainly make more problems with election integrity, and we would ask you to oppose it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Joy Trushinsky for the record. I strongly oppose SB 404, which allows election officials to start counting ballots on the first day of early voting? How will citizens be able to watch this process of vote counting during early voting? If information on the election results is leaked, it will allow candidates to adjust their campaigns, changing the results of elections. I believe our Nevada elections are not safe from fraud since the last legislature changed the voting laws, allowing massive mail-in ballots and other measures. I feel a misdemeanor for a leak in the election is minor punishment. Cheating could occur with mail-in ballots if there is a leak, and the outcome could be changed. I do not support SB 404, but I do support Governor Lombardo's voter integrity bill, SB 405, and it should be heard and passed because we do have problems with our elections in Nevada. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening. Susan Rue, spelled R-U-C-H for the record. Counting ballots before our official election day opens up our election process for more fraud that already occurs here in Nevada. The Heritage Foundation has rated our state as number 50th in the country for election fraud. And I think that's deplorable, and we can do much better than that. We are the only developed country that is now using mail-in ballots. All our other countries, European countries, have all banned mail-in ballots, including Russia, which I think is our enemy, and they have banned mail-in ballots because it's too wrought with fraud. I am just deeply concerned that you are here representing your voters, and if you go to your website, which I don't know whether you do, but 92% of the voters are opposed to this bill. And I think all of you should be paying attention to that because that's who you're representing. So I'm asking you, please do not pass SB 404. Please represent your voters. Thank you very much for your time.
Hi, Katrina Ivanov, Ivanoff, aka Mrs. Fixit. I reside in Assembly District 42, Senate District 9. And I am opposed to that bill. Again, this bill erodes the trust in the voting process due to allowing more, due to allowing more fraud to occur and less chance to watch over the process itself. People in absolute disbelief with our voting systems, with our politicians on every level of the government, and we need to work to earn their trust back, not to erode it. If your own system on Nellis shows such a big opposition on the bill, I really don't know why would you pass this bill any further. Please vote no, and please put Senator Lombardo's 405 bill for listening, at least for listening and being able to comment on it. If you're going to pass it or not, we'll see, but at least give it a chance. Thank you, and have a lovely day, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank you all very much. Is there anyone else in Carson City who would like to testify in opposition? Okay, seeing none, we will go to Las Vegas. You may begin when ready.
Hello, my name is Leslie Quinn, and I am here in opposition of SB 404. I'd like to know why we can't just keep voting simple and make it on one day with ID on paper ballots. I understand allowances need to be provided for those in military via absentee ballots, ADA and/or the elderly via mail-in ballots if they are unable to use technology or get to the poll sites. I like the KISS acronym, keep it super simple. I often hear the repetitive blaming of the 2020 elections or the J6 to substantiate pretty much everything going on in the United States that doesn't align with a certain party's agenda. People, let's be grown-ups, build a bridge, and get over it. We can't grow forward if we keep looking in the rearview mirror. SB 404 infringes on our First Amendment right to petition the government. There are loopholes in SB 404 for compromise voting. The DMV website makes it quite simple for non-U.S. citizens to obtain their ID and proof of residency, as well as a license to drive. All items needed to establish voting in the United States. Both the 15th and the 26th Amendment clearly state that only U.S. citizens have the right to vote. I'd like to share this with all of you. If a government is powerful enough to give people everything they want, it is also powerful enough to take from people everything they've got. You can't have one without the other. Even if collectivism were not morally wrong, we would still oppose it because freedom is more than prosperity. I asked my legislators, Assemblywoman Brittany Miller and Senator Marilyn Don Darrell Loop, to stand with me in opposition to SB 404. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas who would like to testify in opposition? Okay, seeing none. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the telephone?
To testify in opposition to Senate Bill 404, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good evening. CYRUSHOJJATY. It's a beautiful cloudy day out here. Wow. I would like to ditto the past and future comments made on opposition to this bill, especially from Janine Hansen. Yield my time.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Good evening, Chair Gorlow and committee. My name is Jim DeGraffenreid. I'm Nevada's Republican National Committee man in opposition to SB 404 on behalf of the Nevada Republican Party. The bill as originally introduced covered a wide range of subjects, including an increase in emergency powers, new powers for the Secretary of State, changing rules on recounts, allowing arbitrary poll hours, making it more difficult to challenge voters who no longer live in the state, making our already loose election audits meaningless, and changing the burden of proof in court. There have been a number of positive amendments proposed that would address many of these issues, and we support those. However, the one major change to election law remaining in this bill that we absolutely cannot support would allow early tabulation of results starting from the first day of early voting, as well as removing language that ballots be counted in full view of the public. While ballots can be processed prior to Election Day under current law, results cannot be tabulated until Election Day. The objective of every election bill should be to increase voter confidence in the system. Under the current system, we've increased access at the expense of confidence in the election system, and most of the election bills that you're allowing hearings on, including this one, reduce transparency and confidence. Early tabulation of results further erodes the transparency which has been under attack for years in Nevada. As seen often in the observer principle, once someone knows the outcome, it alters what and how they measure. Anything that increases the amount of ballots processed behind closed doors increases distrust in the election system. Every election bill should be an attempt to increase transparency and restore trust to our broken election system in Nevada. This bill does the opposite of that, and for those reasons, we ask you to please vote no on SB 404. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last digit 607, you are unmuted and may begin. Again, caller with the last digit 607, you are unmuted and may begin. Chair, there are no other callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much, Broadcasting. We will close testimony in opposition, open up testimony in neutral. Is there anyone in Carson City who would like to testify in neutral? Seeing none, is there anyone in Las Vegas who would like to testify in neutral? Okay, I don't see anyone coming to the table. Broadcasting, is there anybody on the telephone who would like to testify in neutral?
To testify in neutral for Senate Bill 404, please press *9 to take your place in the queue.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Oh, yes. I tried a few moments ago in opposition. Can I give testimony for opposition, please? I had problems with my phone.
Please go ahead. We'll just reclassify your testimony.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Michael Ryan, Michaelryan. I'm a longtime resident of Nevada. Please oppose SB 404, which allows election officials to start counting ballots on the first day of early voting. I think there are many issues, potential integrity issues with this. So please vote no on SB 04. And what this committee should be focusing on is SB 405. That is a bill that will provide rationality through common sense legislation. You need an ID for everything in adult life, interacting with government agencies. This bill 405 provides free IDs for people who can't afford it. And it's a simple requirement of proof of voter ID to prevent voter fraud. That's what this committee should be focusing on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting, do we have anyone that would like to testify in neutral?
Caller with the last digits 561, please press *6 to unmute your phone.
Can you hear me? Am I being heard? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Jane B. Davis, and I'm from Pahrump and Nye County. SB 404 addresses the ability to challenge someone who is applying to vote in person, but it fails to address the ability to challenge someone who votes by mail ballot. Why is that? A person who knows without a doubt that someone is using another voter's mail ballot to vote has no recourse. Why is that? The bill seeks to mandate the time frame for counting early vote returns, changing 8 a.m. on election day to begin on or after the first day of early voting. Current law declares that anyone disseminating info on early vote count before polls close is guilty of a gross misdemeanor. Extending the number of days before election day for counting returns also extends the time and opportunity to violate the law. This extension should also increase the penalty to a felony. Lastly, the true failure of SB 404 is in violating all statutes on election transparency. It removes the public's right to view ballot handling and counting. The following statutes state repeatedly that ballot counting and handling must be in public view. NRS 293.269931, NRS 293.3606, NRS 293.363, NRS 293B.330, NRS 293B.380, and NRS 293B.353. This bill is a disgrace that tramples all over the rights of the people. Please vote no against this bill. Thank you.
I think we'll reclassify that as opposition. Broadcasting, do we have anyone testifying in neutral?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm sorry, I had my hand up for opposition. For some reason, it got put down. May I please just put in my opposition and say ditto all the callers ahead of me?
Let's just reopen up testimony in opposition. Please go ahead.
Okay, my name is Lisa Partee. It's spelled P as in Paul, A-R-T as in Tom, E-E. The not being able to count in public is just horrific. And to count it early in the start, we know that we don't trust the election process anymore, and this is just going to further degrade that process. I really implore you to vote against SB 404. Thank you for letting me testify. Take care.
You're very welcome. Broadcasting, is there anyone else just on the phones?
If you would like to testify in opposition or neutral for Senate Bill 404, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no other callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. We will close testimony on opposition and neutral and invite the bill sponsor up for any final remarks.
Chair Gorlow, members of the committee, thank you for your patience at this late hour. I certainly believe that sections 5 and 27 provide more protections for all voters. Democrat, Republican, Independent, nonpartisan, conservative, liberal. If anyone's challenged on their residency, it clears up an ambiguity in the statute as to what constitutes satisfactory identification, and it parallels our statute on same-day voter registration. As to the early vote count, I believe that will take burdens off our clerks registrars to focus on the mail ballots and the election day ballots if that passes. With your permission, Chair, may I give Dr. Tenorio and Ms. Dermick opportunity just to make a closing argument? Thank you.
I just would quickly like to thank Senator Orenshaw for sponsoring this bill and for the chair and committee members' time today. Nevada's election system has already received an A grading from the Institute for Responsive Government, and SB 404 will only strengthen it.
Hi, Isaac Tenorio with Strategy 60, today representing Captioning Legal Center. As you saw in support testimony, this bill has support from ideologies across the board because it's good policy. It would put Nevada in the forefront of more effective and efficient democracy. I do want to address a few points to maybe provide further context and maybe more clarity. First, canvassing of mail-in ballots, it's already happening, so this bill will not provide any further security risk. Second, when you early vote, your ballot is casted, but is not canvassed. Canvass is the official tally of the votes. The purpose of the canvass is to account for every ballot cast and to ensure that every valid vote casted is included in the election total, so they provide additional security measures in that process. Third, this does not make any changes to the poll watching process, like any at all. So any Nevadan that wants to still volunteer to poll watch still has the ability to do so. SB 404 would be a substantial victory, not just for the hardworking election administrators that manage this complex process, but for Nevadans across all our great state. Members of the hardworking Assembly Committee of Legislative Operations and Elections, we thank you for your time, and I want to thank Senator Orenshaw and Kerry for their work on this bill. Thank you so much. I know I'm the only thing separating you from dinner, so have a wonderful night.
Thank you very much, but we do have public comment. But I wanted to just briefly mention, because some of us were able to go to Clark County and witness the process on what it was supposed to be. So you had mentioned that, at least with Clark County, you can watch the process at any point. I'm not real sure yet on other ones. I would assume it's the same policy or something similar. So actually, legal, please. Appreciate you, Mr. Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Although this bill deletes the reference to in public for the counting of the early vote results, that is to ensure that the entire process isn't open to the general public. However, under regulation NAC 293.356, it allows and requires the county clerks to allow observers of the counting process. It's just that the counting clerks can put a limit on the number of observers in the counting process so they don't interfere with the counting process. So the ability to observe the counting of the early votes after the period of early vote begins is still preserved in the regulation in NAC 293.356. It's just not a process that's open to the entire general public. It's open to the observers who meet the qualifications of the regulation and any limitations on the number of observers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for that clarification. I appreciate you all being here. And with that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 404, and we will open up public comment. As he mentioned, you are between us and food. That can be very challenging, but please do not hesitate to come up to the table if you would like to testify or not testify, comment in public comment. Anyone in Carson City? Seeing none, is there anyone in Vegas who would like to provide comments in public comment? I guess that's kind of wrong. I'm hungry. Broadcasting, is there anyone who would like to provide public comment?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
CYRUSHOJJATY. I was going to give public comment about some issues, but I figured you guys want to have some dinner. I understand. I just, first of all, like to thank you for allowing us to talk about these issues, so I'll toss it on for another day.
Mr. Jati, if you would like to take your 2 minutes, please go ahead.
Oh, okay, sure. Thank you. Well, Florida governor just mandated E-Verify for all employers, and a lot of employers, particularly construction sites, are being affected. Now, obviously, I would wish that some bill like that would be brought in this state, because I think that is the most effective way to really address this problem, because we did talk a lot about immigration in this hearing. If you don't think E-Verify is the best way to do it, I think we can audit every single employer, figuring out why they're hiring these people. Maybe we can give them guest worker visas. If there are people who are American citizens who are not willing to do our job, because we have among the highest rates in the country, I think we can tax remittances. So much money of their earnings is sent in other countries. This is seriously a concern, because over time they want more representation, they want more services, and where's this funds going to come from? We're running these huge budget deficits at the federal level. How long can this continue? Not to mention a lot of their jobs. You look at construction. We've got Boxable here in Northtown. You push a button and a lot of those jobs are going to be affected. Let's think about these issues, about the fact that many of them steal Social Security numbers, from what I've heard, in order to get employment. We should have policies that are mainly done on merit. Other than that, and not to mention tackle birthright citizenship. Other than that, enjoy your dinner. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and we will go back to Carson City for public comment.
Hi, Katrina Ivanov, aka Mrs. Fixit, and I just wanted to say that I'm really impressed on how, I apologize, I don't know your name, but how you conducted this meeting. Usually, what I witness is sometimes the chairs are negative towards the people with the opposite opinion of them. I don't even know your opinion on the bill, which is commendable to me. And also you allowed people that were not in the queue for the right thing to still say their opinion, which I also appreciated, because at the end of the day, we selected you guys to come here to represent us. And this is the first time since I've been on hearings that I see true action of it. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind comments. I do firmly believe that everyone should have their voice. So I appreciate you. Thank you. We'll go back to the telephone broadcasting. Do we have anyone on telephone for public comment?
Here, there are no callers choosing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you very much. We will close public comment. And with that, thank you all for being with us and sticking with us through the end. And also special thanks to our guest counsel, Mr. Powers. We appreciate your help with the bills. And with that, everyone go eat. We're adjourned.